You are listening to the sounds of the Right On Network.
Hello and welcome back. This is episode 12 of 30 Minutes to Get Back, a podcast where we cover Peter Jackson's docuseries Get Back 30 minutes at a time. My name is Chris, and as always, I'm joined by AJ. AJ, how are you tonight?
I am doing quite well, Chris. I'm ready to talk about some Get Back, 4 Year Blue, the Beatles, what have you.
Yeah, I'm ready to get into it. I know the last episode that we covered, we had Billy Preston showing up. They were, he was sprinkling his magic all over the studio, and they were kind of in a stride. And this episode kind of feels like they can see, the summit of the mountain, right? Like I think I called it in my notes, like this is the Beatles looking up, because for the first time in a while, it doesn't feel like they're talking about whether or not the project is going to survive or the band is going to survive. They're trying to figure out how they're going to finish it.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're saying that they can kind of see over the summit, but then it also seems like there's like this dread and this unknowing too. Like, are we going to finish it? But I think it's more about they're talking about, are we going to do a live performance, or are we going to do a TV show, or are we going to do some extravagant live performance at a location? So that's some of the anxiety, dread going on. But as far as the music, they're like, yeah, we got this.
Yeah. And it seems like they're having fun making music, which is another, really good thing to see, because they just look like they're having a ball. And, in this episode, it actually kind of starts out, where they're settling into a George Harrison song, which is one of your favorites. So I figured I'd toss that to you because I know you love 4 Year Blue.
Yeah, and I'm interested in, okay, how much are we not seeing? Because George Harrison, he comes in, I don't know if he recorded things on an 8-track and like a demo and go, hey, listen to this. So by the time you come to the studio, we're ready to go. But he's just telling them like, hey, this is like just some kind of bluesy 12-bar blues, 1, 2, 3, ABC. This is how you do rock and roll beginnings, honky tonk type thing. And he's you do this very unprofessional. It's, man, I wish I had Shazam back in this time. It was like the early 2000s, and it was a local college radio station. Like on Wednesdays, they would play this country music and like blues music from like the 40s and 30s. Sometimes the recording sounded like it was in a barn, and it was wonderful. Mm-hmm. And he was asking George Martin, he was like, hey, George Harrison was, how can we make the piano sounds kind of like honky tonk, where it's in one of those Blazing Saddles saloons, and you see them, they lift the hood up and they're putting the paper in there. And I was like, wow, that's all that it took to make it sound like that. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. What did you think about seeing this process?
I really enjoyed it a lot too. And it kind of reminds you that they're all accomplished musicians. I mean, maybe they're not technically sound, but you see John like playing the steel lap and a slide guitar. And that's not something that, if you don't see it, you would think about. Like, oh, John knows how to play slide guitar. Like, why would he? But, we keep circling back to this idea of them liking the blues, and they jam blues songs together, or they turn songs into kind of like a bluesy sound. So it makes sense that, one of them would be playing this instrument. I mean, it's on the track, so obviously somebody does. But I think in my mind, when I listen to the Beatles, I just always assume the guitars are George and John's just doing rhythm guitar, but that's not really how it goes. They take turns. And so that was something that I found very interesting. Now, when you saw this getting made, like, what were your thoughts of the song before and after? Like, did you feel like it enhanced anything for you? Or do you feel like, this is kind of where I was at with it, even before I got to see, the song get built?
Because of that Beatles Anthology 1, 2, and 3, I think this is on the Beatles Anthology 3 CD, where a lot of these outtakes and things that they're saying in this, even like they're joking around, it's on that CD. So there's this one take, and that's why I knew that John was playing the slide guitar, because there's a take where George Harrison, he's laughing, and during the solo he's saying in a like a not facetious way but like in a joking way, "Go Johnny go." So it's kind of like a double entendre joke, like "Go Johnny go," like Chuck Berry, but he's saying, "No, go John Lennon go on this slide guitar solo you're doing."
Mm-hmm.
That's why I love these guys. Again, I'm just making observations like with the Rolling Stones. It's serious stuff. Like I said this on the last podcast, but I had these audio drops, so it didn't make it on to the recording. But with the Rolling Stones, like Scorsese is using the music in the backdrop, and a heroin overdose, and it's some serious things going on. And Elvis, he's making these movies, and it's a drama, and he's dreamy, and like it's serious business. And with the Beatles, it's like our approach is going to be when we make these movies, we're going to the Marx Brothers, and they'll do serious stuff because when they're doing this, Let It Be, it's serious stuff. But again, like they don't mind being funny because that's their background.
Mm-hmm.
And something that was interesting, I forgot to mention this on the last episode, when Paul presented Teddy Boy to them, in those lyrics, he's saying, "Mommy, don't worry, your Teddy Boy's here. He's taking good care of you." And John Lennon, he was kind of messing around during that. But that was some personal stuff because when they were younger, they were the Teddy Boys. Like that was like a look, that was kind of like a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And they were doing that, and both John and Paul, they lost their mothers as teenagers. So that was some serious stuff, even though they were kind of hiding behind like, oh, well, maybe this isn't that serious. And I could have been reading a little too much into it, but I felt like when George was presenting For Your Blue, he was kind of like, it's just kind of this, we can do this or we can't. Like, he didn't seem like I'm going to push this point. No, we must do this recording. And then I still think if the plug wasn't pulled out, were they going to perform this on that rooftop?
Yeah. You always wonder, which songs would have made it. This is something that maybe they could do. I mean, they did have an organ, right? They didn't have, they had an electric piano.
And Billy Preston, again, he's not here because he has other commitments. But they were doing this. And in this section of our 30 minutes, they perform live. Like it's a one take Charlie. There's no plug-ins, there's no punch-ins. And they go, "Hey, this is the take that's on the album."
Yeah.
And that's what blew my mind, actually, Chris. The first time I watched this, I was like, oh. Because I think there'll be another scene. Maybe I just saw this outtake somewhere else. But it's another scene where George is like really dressed up and like he's in a booth performing this by himself.
Well, I did read that he re-recorded the vocals because he wasn't happy with the vocals on this version.
Okay.
So I did read that they dubbed in some new vocals for the, for the final version, I guess. But that was the take of the band that they did.
Yeah, because there's a part where he goes, "Those old 12-bar blues," and he's kind of joking about it. That's on the record.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great, though. It almost like George understood the assignment, right? Because they're going back. They want to do single takes. They don't want to have a lot of, studio tricks. They want to be able to just, let's make a song, record a song, and a song that we can play live. And he came with it, that's, like you said, I think it was take 6 they used. So they didn't really have to run through it that much.
And Paul understood the assignment because he was just jamming on that piano.
Oh yeah. That's one of the things that I kept writing in my notes is that they just looked really happy making these songs. I mean, they were joking, they were smiling, nobody seemed tense. I mean, I liked what George's vocals sounded like. I thought he sounded great because he was doing something different with his voice, but I loved it. And, the performance just, it felt complete, like you said. It just, that ended, that version of it just felt like, oh, that's the song I know.
this song sounds real. You mentioned before that maybe some people are saying that they make good albums, but but can they go on tour and do this, for 50 shows, and they just showed you like, hey, we can do this in one take. And they know each other too, and they just get music. So when he's saying like, okay, in this part we'll have a piano solo, in this part we'll give the slide guitar some, John can take this. And then they're always working with George Martin, where at this point we can do all kind of shorthands and he understands what we're saying. Where if we get a different producer, we got to break in all this coded language with them.
And it's interesting because the Beatles always, are known for stretching what you can do in the studio. And you forget that they're kind of students of music as well, of popular music, that they have a wealth of kind of classic R&B, rock, blues that they can pull from because they know all of that stuff, because that's what they listened to when they were younger. So it's interesting to see them strip back, be able to do that and show that we're not just, kind of nerds in the lab. We can play. We're a band.
Yep. And we're watching what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, definitely. So now the next thing we see is, Peter Jackson gives us one of those title cards that tells us that Primrose Hill idea is officially off the table now. And we get a big section, which I think is kind of what you were alluding to, where they're trying to figure out what they're going to do, because Paul still seems to want something big. He wants, destination concert. And it sounds like John and George were bringing up, well, maybe we'll just turn our bodies to the cameras and just perform in the studio, and that'll be the concert. And Paul did not look thrilled about that idea. And part of me was wondering is, he sees this current form of the Beatles where they go into the studio and they make a single, or they make some song and they put an album together, and then they all go to their separate corners and they don't see each other again for months. And I think, at least I'm reading into it, but I think that he sees that as one of the main reasons why the band feels like it could end at any moment. And I really believe that the live show isn't just about ending the project with a bang, but I think he feels like it's something that could save the band. Like, we need to stay together and we need to perform these songs live together, and we can't just come in and write a song that John brought in or George brought in and work together and then disappear, because that's how the band dissolves. And I was wondering if maybe that whole conversation, if there was anything you picked up on or anything that it made you think about. But that's where I was going with it. I just felt Paul really wants this. And I think he really sees it as, this is how we save the band.
Yeah, Paul McCartney, he really looked like, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if we don't get our act together. And he may see like what's coming up around the corner, because we're about to go into the 70s. Heavy metal is about to come out. There's about to be some wild live shows and theatrics. So he's saying just us kind of looking slubby and just turning around and performing, that's not going to be enough. Even though from our point of view, it's like, man, if you guys are doing anything, we're going to watch it. Like, we are literally doing that. Like, we're literally watching them kind of mess around in the studio, and we're going, wow, This is fascinating. But he's saying that, like, man, we're the Beatles. If people are saying like we're one of the number one acts in the world, we got to act like it. So, we got to dress up. We have to put on a show.
Yeah. And they definitely know who they are, because there's even a joke that John, I think, makes, because they were talking about doing something on a song. And he said, oh, well, I have a lot of good ideas. I am a Beatle, And you feel like that is part of their problem, maybe, like, because they think, well, we're the Beatles. Whatever we do, people are going to flock to it. They're going to love it. It doesn't matter. We don't need to do extra. And, like you said, Paul is kind of like, no, I think we have to do extra, because he, like you said, he is looking forward. I mean, in 1972, I think that's when he goes on like his next big world tour with Wings. So he's got the itch. He knows that you need a big, big shows are going to be a a thing of the future in the 70s, which I think they are, right? The 70s are kind of like
Oh
really big
yes.
tours, bigger than like what you get in the 60s.
Yeah, I just watched an Earth, Wind, and Fire documentary, and they hired an illusionist where they're doing all type of tricks of floating in there and playing the bass. It's all kind of things going on. That was like 1975, 1976. So it's going to get huge, bigger than Stonehenge, bigger than Stonehenge and the spoof heavy metal movie.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Spinal Tap.
This is Spinal Tap. It's going to be bigger
Yeah.
than that. So, yeah, he is. But I think I don't know why. I don't know why Paul McCartney thought it was cutting corners where they did this once, where they performed somewhere and it's like, tiers and rafters where it's the audience watching with them. I think that'd be intimate and also lively.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I think it was Lindsay Hogg where it's like, well, you've already done that. You need to do something else.
Mhm. And the funny thing is, because you were saying that Paul really looked dejected,
Yes.
but then we get this great moment where, right, Michael Lindsay Hogg and Glenn Johns start talking to him, and the screen lets us know that they're telling him they have an idea of doing the performance on the roof, and he lights up.
I thought that was interesting. Like, you think that's a great idea? Which I love it, but I'm just like, oh, so that's the answer?
I know, it's crazy. And what kept striking me watching this sequence is like, this is one of the most iconic moments in rock history, especially up till now. But like the rooftop concert, you can't talk about the Beatles without talking about the rooftop concert.
And that's some of the images we have in our heads.
Yeah, yeah. And just watching it like become an idea and seeing them like climb up to the roof to walk around and check it out. It just, I don't know, it just kind of blew me away that sometimes I'm watching this documentary and I'm forgetting that there's historic moments happening in front of our eyes. And, besides the songs, this rooftop concert is one of those things that other bands try to replicate outdoor stuff like this because the Beatles did it.
Yeah, they do that at record signings and stuff in LA, performing on rooftops on top of record stores. I think that Paul McCartney may have lit up because he's like, okay, you know what? Because, he knows like, hey, we're about to turn 30. How edgy can we be? Well, if we're disturbing the peace, what if the cops come up and they pull us off stage? That gets recorded. Hey, we're relevant again. We're lively. We're back at it. Let's go into the 1970s, baby.
Which I think, if I remember correctly, maybe in part one was an idea that somebody threw out there. Like, what if we play a concert somewhere that, like, they don't want us to be there, like Parliament, right? And they wanted to do something that was like a little dangerous, that they could get yanked off the stage for doing.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings that back, and I think Paul has, he understands, I guess, presentation, and I think showmanship. Yeah. And he was like, oh, wow, just playing on the roof and people don't know we're going to play a concert and then we start playing a concert. That could be something. That's better than doing it on a hill or doing it on a stage in some small bar. Like, he didn't want small and intimate. He wanted big, and it's big.
In a business district, no less.
Mm-hmm. And it's just funny watching them walking around on the roof. They're trying to figure out if it's going to hold all their equipment or if they need permits. And it's just crazy just to see them planning, one of the defining moments in rock history.
Yeah, and I'm scared of heights. So just seeing them walking around, I'm like, oh, man, if one of them trip, or it said on the screen, they don't even know if it'll support the instruments, like bringing them up, and if someone would have caved in.
Yeah, I mean, come on, you got to protect Ringo. Don't let him walk around up there until you know what you're doing.
And they had some guests, and then remember, there's gonna be cameras from different angles and stuff. So wow, again, magic. How in the heck did they capture this? But again, everybody's professionals. Like the camera crew and stuff, they know what they're doing. So yeah.
And then talking about magic, then they go inside and they start working on "Let It Be." It's like one of the most famous songs in the world, and they're like, "Hey, let's work on this," and while they plan the rooftop concert, like it's it's like a double barrel of music history gets shot into our face at the end of this, and they're all loosening up. I think they're having drinks, so they seem like they're getting buzzed.
What is that cookie? That
I
cracker
don't,
cookie they're eating? It's like a
I don't
black and
know.
white cookie or something, but I'm like, I
Hmm.
want that.
I want that. And they were making some kind of drink. Somebody was pouring drinks. I can't remember who it was.
Yeah, like white wine. It was George Harrison, but it seemed like John Lennon very disinterested in Let It Be.
Yeah.
And George and John picking up the bass, not an option.
Hmm.
They're not doing it.
Although I feel like watching these that John could be assumed to be losing interest, but I think he has a shelf life in the studio.
Yes.
He says a lot of times like I'm gonna hit my peak and then I'm gonna lose it and then I'm not gonna be good anymore. Like, oh, this is a great take that I did. I can't do that again. I feel like he has a shelf life. Like, it's nighttime, it's getting late. I gave you everything I got, and now I'm just gonna lay down on the studio floor and strum the guitar until you figure out how you want this song to go.
Yeah, because you got to remember that they may be doing an 8-hour shift, and it's a lot of waiting around because they got to move mics, they got to make sure this sounds right. So it's like, okay, I'm an artist, but I've been sitting around for like 2 hours doing nothing. So yeah, and if we say that he's a musical genius, and he might be on some spectrum where it's just like, yeah, look, like you're saying, I gave you what I got, and I can probably do this again, but not today. We're in
And I
like
feel
the
like,
seventh, eighth hour. Let's get moving.
and I feel like we got a lot of that. I think I remember when they were doing "Don't Let Me Down," he felt his vocals the day before Billy showed up were great, and he was like, "Man, I wish I could bring those vocals back to today, and we could do it here now with Billy playing." And even like when they were doing "For You Blue," he said something like, "I think you got my best in that take." So he definitely, I don't know if
Self-aware.
he doesn't have the attention span to do it over and over again, or he, if he gets bored, or if he just really like sometimes you hear him talk about himself like he doesn't always buy into his skills and that he thinks he has to work on it. I remember him talking about that like around the time of Help, where he was like, George is playing guitar and I got to work on my voice because I that's how I'm going to be good. I need to make my voice better.
Personally, I felt like I was a phenom. That's what he said.
Yeah. And that's kind of how it ends, right? Because they leave that day. They're going to come back and work on Let It Be in the morning. And it's the end of part 2.
Yeah,
And
speaking of that fatigue, like there's a part where John Lennon was even biting on the microphone, like he was chewing it up. And that's when
yeah,
they're like, oh, okay, yeah, we better wrap it up for today.
we better wrap it up. And, part 2, it really is, it's a wild ride because we start with George having quit the band. And we end with them talking about the rooftop concert, finishing this album in 4 days? They want to do the rooftop concert, I think, in 4 days. So they move from what again, Twickenhelm.
Mm-hmm.
I always forget the name of it. And they're in
Twickenham.
Apple Studios now, Twickenham, thank you. Billy Preston showed up. The chemistry seems back. It's such an arc from the beginning of this part to the end. And I guess that's where I kind of got my idea of them looking up, because it's almost like we got past all of this really bad stuff that we were dealing with, and even now Paul's perking up about the idea of doing a concert on the roof.
It seemed like really that change of location really turned things around. They were very miserable in that studio, that whatever that was, Twickenham or Twickham, I don't know. We also get some John Lennon playing "Mean Mr. Mustard."
Yeah, it's funny, those songs on Abbey Road, I always feel like, and I think everybody says, because they blend in, that they don't feel like they're full songs, they just have
Right.
pieces. But it's obviously something he was working on for a while.
What about when the art dealer showed up?
Yeah, I don't know a ton about him.
Yeah.
I don't know if he shows up in part 3, but I think his name was Robert Fraser.
Yes.
But he's just, I guess what it shows you is that the Beatles probably are still in the zeitgeist because a lot of people kind of float in and out of Apple that you see. And I guess maybe it, having this kind of art dealer who's supposed to be a pretty big, from what I read, he seems like he was a pretty big deal. Just showing up is just another one of those things where, like, if the Beatles are in the studio, people want to show up.
Here's something. I forget what they were talking about, but at a certain point, George Harrison made a Captain Marvel reference.
Yeah, I caught that.
So here's something for the young people back home that's listening to this. In West Side Story, that movie came out in 1959. There's a part where they're sitting around and you're like, do you think he has a ray gun like Captain Marvel?
Mm-hmm.
And what young people don't realize is, like, all right, a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, they can see a Superman symbol and go, hey, that's Superman. Back then, it could have been either one of them. It could have been Superman or Captain Marvel. That is like, this is the symbol for the superheroes. And it's just, Superman won that battle. But there was a time where it was like Captain Marvel was the guy.
Mm-hmm. That's funny because my head, now I'm doing this thing where I'm reading every Marvel comic from the 1960s. And I went to Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Because I think he started like right around 1967 was his first issue. And I'm not sure how that coincides with like Marvel UK because you don't know what they were getting over there. So
Right.
my brain went to that Captain Marvel because he had ray guns and he was an alien and he was much more like a space alien than he was a superhero at the time because he was in that like green Creed suit. So that's who I thought they were referencing. So it's funny to see where we both went.
Oh, you may be totally correct about that. Maybe that's why the guy in West Side Story said ray gun. Huh.
And yeah, I don't know. I do know he was a late 60s kind of invention. I want to say 67, 68. He was probably in his own series. So that's what I was thinking. And then I was trying to think, well, what kind of comics were they getting in the UK at the time? I didn't do any of that research, but it was just one of those things I thought about.
And then you have Elvis Presley being inspired by the get up of Captain Marvel Jr.
Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
See?
The Vegas years.
Superheroes are always there. People. They never went away. It was never new. It didn't start with Iron Man in 2008.
Yeah, that's right. Soldiers during World War II had comics in their backpacks.
See?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I don't feel bad about liking comics now. I never did. I'm just...
Yeah.
So this was... The other thing with this is interesting because you mentioned that there were kind of two sides, and we see that, right? Because on one side, we have Billy Preston, we have the rooftop concert, we have songs coming together, and it shows like a cohesion with the band. Then on the other side, in this part, we also kind of got a hint at the future when they were talking about Alan Klein. And it's almost like you get the two sides of the coin, right? Because you do see kind of foreshadowing of where the band, split starts to come when it deals with the management. But we're also seeing all of this progress they're making. So I don't know if that's kind of part of the tension that you felt, or if you were more thinking about the tension of trying to finish the project.
Yeah, I don't know. There was a part where really like Paul McCartney was questioning his life choices. Like he just kind of looked that way, and when they were all kind of pleading with him, it was almost like, I don't want to talk in front of these cameras.
Yeah.
Especially business.
Yeah.
And the camera can catch us talking about music, but the business part, it was like, I don't want to talk about that.
And I almost get the feeling when we watch it that George and John are very similar. Mm-hmm. And Paul probably wants to talk them into things. It seems, like when they're both talking about, well, why don't we just do a run through of the album in the studio live to camera? and that'll be it. And Paul's like, that's not what I want. But now I got to convince these two guys. And, it's like hitting it. He used to say, I think he said that earlier in the episode where he said, sometimes he feels like it's 3 against 1. And that looked like one of those moments.
Yep.
Yeah. So you got any other thoughts about part 2 or about this last bit that we got to see, or any thoughts about what we're going to be getting into in the final chapter of this docuseries, the part 3?
No, I ran through my notes. I'm very interested in how much we have left because I think a lot of my highlights, we have done them thus far as what I was looking forward to. I know obviously we're going to have the rooftop. So yeah, I'm excited. What about yourself?
I am too. Full disclosure, I watched the first 2 parts when they came out and I never watched part 3. So I'm going to start watching it, first time as we go into part 3. So that's going to be my first impression. I have no idea when anything happens, when, what other songs are being done, when they actually have the concert, how much, what we see. I don't have any of that info, so I'm going in blind.
That's going to be fun.
You're
going to watch along with us, and I'm going off a memory that, I think I saw this in 2021, so my memory's hazy. Let's do it. Guys, what did you think about this segment? And let us know, like, some of your favorite bits and things that you look forward to. Like, for instance, I really like 4 Year Blues, so I couldn't wait for them to go over that. Let us know. Write to us at 30getback@gmail.com. Where's some other places they can reach us, Chris?
They can reach us. Can they make comments on Spotify and on Apple Pods?
Oh, guys, that's a way you can support us. If you can go to Apple, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, or anywhere where you can rate and review us on the podcatcher. If you can rate and review us, that'll help us out a lot because we can find those other Beatle heads out there to talk about some 30 minutes to get back. So, until next time, guys, have a ball and a biscuit.